As we previously reported, Governor Tony Evers proposing to spend more than $106 million statewide to fight PFAS contamination to ensure clean drinking water. And now Republicans have responded with a bill of their own. In a First Alert update, Jason Zimmerman breaks down the legislation and whether a compromise might be reached.
At the state capitol, legislators on both sides of the aisle now expressing concern over PFAS and the ability to maintain clean drinking water. This was the governor during his State of the State address back in January.
PFAS are a pressing threat to our state's economy and our health and our well-being and our way of life.
Republicans this week also addressing PFAS contamination with a new bill introduced by state senators Rob Coles and Eric Wimberger. While there's no specific dollar figure attached, it would offer assistance to local governments in complying with government-required testing and treatment while protecting individuals, municipalities, and businesses from government overreach.
If you are known to have a contaminant in your land, and it's migrating from your land to your neighbor's land, which PFAS does, it goes through the water table, then it's possible the DNR considers you what's called an emitter. I've already introduced last year, and I'll reintroduce shortly after the budget probably comes out, additional language to stop liability in circumstances where it's an innocent person.
The governor's plan sets aside more than $106 million in his proposed budget to address PFAS concerns, taking a three-pronged approach.
We're going to increase PFAS testing, sampling, and monitoring statewide so that we can find these contaminants and get them out of the water. We're going to make more resources available to on-the-ground partners to respond to PFAS contamination when it happens. And we're going to work to increase awareness about the dangers of PFAS so folks can take steps to keep themselves and their loved ones safe.
The Joint Finance Committee is expected to take up the issue on Thursday. Both sides expect some type of compromise before the next budget cycle starting on July 1st. Reporting in Grand Chute, Jason Zimmerman, Action 2 News.